Excuse me, you can't block a mandatory HOA inspection. I demand access, screeched Gloria Finnerty, HOA president and full-time boundary violator. She was mid-tantrum at the foot of my gravel driveway, flanked by two nervous HOA volunteers, when my wife Sarah calmly flashed her badge. Actually, Sarah said, pulling out a thin manila folder, you can't trespass on federal property. And if you'd like to talk warrants. She flipped the folder open. Gloria's face drained of color. Because there it was, her own name, atop a live, unsealed federal warrant. I'm Elliot Grange, a quiet engineer with a taste for cold brew and Norwegian crime novels. My happy place. A cozy, self-built cabin tucked deep in the forested edges of Foxglove Summit, a so-called rustic community, with an overzealous HOA. I kept to myself, paid dues on time, and installed a composting toilet without fanfare. But that serenity attracted the wrong kind of attention. Gloria Finnerty, HOA president, spiritual descendant of Nurse Ratched, and woman who once fined a man for hanging wind chimes in an emotionally aggressive manner. Gloria had a new obsession: cabin inspections. And mine was next on her clipboard. She claimed it was part of the quarterly rustic compliance initiative. I declined. She cited bylaws. I asked her to leave. Gloria responded by hiking up with binoculars and a digital thermometer, insisting it was for safety. Then came the emails. We're concerned about mold. Some residents reported smoke smells. Do you house bees? But Gloria didn't know Sarah. My wife wasn't just a quiet woman who baked sourdough and managed to keep succulents alive. She worked for the U.S. Marshals Service. And she didn't take kindly to bluffing authoritarians waving fake codes like magic wands. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning when Gloria marched up my driveway with what looked like a property assessment form and the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Elliot, we need to discuss your cabin's compliance status. I was sipping coffee on my porch, watching a pair of cardinals fight over birdseed, enjoying the kind of peaceful morning that makes you grateful for rural living. What compliance status? She pulled out a laminated card that looked suspiciously homemade. I'm authorized under Section 12-4 of the Community Guidelines to conduct structural assessments. I'd read those guidelines cover to cover when I bought the property. Section 12-4 was about pool maintenance. Gloria, that's about chlorine levels. She huffed like I'd personally insulted her grandmother. Well, it's been updated. The audacity was almost impressive. 2 days later, she returned with backup, a nervous man named Dennis who kept apologizing and a woman with a clipboard who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Elliot, we've received multiple complaints about your cabin. I was replacing a loose board on my deck, the kind of normal maintenance that apparently qualified as suspicious activity in Gloria's world. What complaints? Dennis cleared his throat. Well, there's been reports of unusual sounds. I looked at him. Unusual sounds? Gloria jumped in. Hammering at odd hours. Loud music. Possible illegal construction. The hammering was me fixing the deck they were currently standing next to. The music was Norwegian folk songs at reasonable volumes. The illegal construction was a bird feeder I'd installed last month. But Gloria was just getting warmed up. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures of my cabin like she was documenting a crime scene. Is this structure permitted? She asked, gesturing at my perfectly legal, professionally inspected cabin. Yes, Gloria. I showed you the permits last year. She ignored me and kept snapping photos. What about this composting toilet? Are you sure it meets county standards? The composting toilet had been installed by a licensed contractor and passed 3 separate inspections. It's in the file, Gloria. She made a note on her clipboard. We'll need to verify that. The woman with the clipboard whispered something to Dennis, who nodded nervously. I was beginning to understand why the previous HOA president had moved to Florida. The situation escalated when Gloria decided to expand her investigation beyond my property. She started questioning my neighbors about suspicious activity coming from my cabin. Mrs. Patterson, who lived across the trail, later told me Gloria had knocked on her door asking about strange smells and possible fire hazards. The strange smells were probably my morning coffee and the occasional grilled cheese sandwich. The fire hazards were presumably my fireplace, which I used for its intended purpose of providing warmth and ambience. Then came the night visit. I was reading in my living room when I heard footsteps on my porch. Through the window, I saw Gloria with a flashlight, peering through the gaps in my curtains. When I opened the door, she jumped back like she'd been caught stealing. "Oh, Elliot. I was just checking for carbon monoxide leaks." She was holding a device that looked suspiciously like a television remote. "Gloria, it's 9:30 at night." She straightened her shoulders. Emergency inspections can happen at any time under the new safety protocols. I'd never heard of any new safety protocols. What protocols? She waved her fake device around. The ones approved at the last emergency board meeting. There hadn't been an emergency board meeting. I would have known because I actually read the meeting minutes. The breaking point came when Gloria enlisted her adult son Trevor to help with what she called enhanced surveillance. Trevor, who looked like he'd rather be playing video games, set up a folding chair at the edge of my property and just sat there. 4 hours. With binoculars. When I asked him what he was doing, he mumbled something about monitoring compliance activities. I asked him what that meant. He shrugged. "Mom says I need to watch for code violations." I looked at this 20-something kid watching my cabin like it might suddenly sprout illegal additions. "Trevor, what code violations?" He pulled out a laminated sheet. "Unauthorized modifications, improper waste disposal, and..." He squinted at the paper, "excessive bird attraction." I had put up exactly one bird feeder. Apparently, that qualified as excessive. When Gloria showed up unannounced the following week, clipboard in one hand, bolt cutters in the other, Sarah met her at the base of the property. This time, Gloria wasn't alone. She'd brought Dennis, the clipboard woman, and 2 other people I didn't recognize. It looked like a small invasion force. "Elliot, we need immediate access to conduct the mandatory safety inspection." Sarah stepped forward, still in her work clothes from the marshal's office. "Ma'am, do you have a warrant?" Gloria's laugh was sharp and bitter. "This is my jurisdiction. I don't need a warrant." That's when Sarah went inside and returned with a file she'd been holding onto for weeks. You see, Sarah doesn't just work for the U.S. Marshal Service. She's good at her job. Really good. And when someone like Gloria starts throwing around fake authority and making people miserable, Sarah notices. She'd run Gloria's name through the system months ago, just out of curiosity. What she found was interesting. Gloria had used her HOA title to authorize a fake business license in a nearby county 3 years ago. She'd represented herself as a government official to help someone skip proper licensing procedures. Sarah had submitted it to a federal task force that handles identity fraud cases. And this week, it came back, active warrant for impersonating a government official. The federal government takes that kind of thing seriously. Very seriously. Using fake authority to circumvent legal processes isn't just unethical, it's a felony. And Gloria had done it in writing, with signatures and official letterhead that she'd created herself. Sarah had copies of everything. The fraudulent documents, the fake seal, even email correspondence where Gloria explicitly claimed to be a county licensing official. It was the kind of evidence that makes prosecutors smile. The transformation was immediate and spectacular. Gloria went from entitled HOA dictator to stammering suburban mom in about 3 seconds. That's not. I was helping the community. Her voice cracked on the word community. Sarah remained calm, professional, the way she'd been trained. "Ma'am, you represented yourself as a county official to approve a contractor's license. That's a federal crime." Gloria's 2 volunteers started backing away like she'd announced she had the plague. Dennis looked like he might be sick. "I was just trying to help Bob get his landscaping business started." Sarah pulled out her phone. "And falsifying government documents to do it." The bolt cutters clattered to the ground with a metallic clang that seemed to echo through the forest. But Gloria wasn't done. She switched tactics, trying to turn the situation around. "This is harassment. You're using your position to intimidate a volunteer. Sarah just smiled. Ma'am, I'm off duty. This is a citizen's arrest based on an active federal warrant. She showed Gloria the paperwork. You have the right to remain silent. Gloria's face went through several colors. Red, white, then a pale green that suggested she was about to lose her lunch. You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president. Sarah was already calling for backup. That's not a real position of authority, ma'am. And even if it were, federal law supersedes homeowner association bylaws. The next 20 minutes were surreal. Gloria alternated between demanding to speak to Sarah's supervisor and claiming the whole thing was a misunderstanding. I never said I was a county official. But Sarah had the emails. In this message, you signed as Gloria Finnerty, County Licensing Coordinator. That's not a real title, and you don't work for the county. Gloria tried a different approach. I was just helping streamline the process. Sarah shook her head. You created fake credentials and charged someone $300 to process a license application you had no authority to handle. $300. Gloria had been running a side business using her HOA title to convince people she had government authority. When the sheriff arrived, Gloria made one last desperate play. This is about my cabin inspections. She's retaliating because I found violations. The sheriff, a patient man named Deputy Collins, looked at the warrant and then at Gloria. Ma'am, this warrant is for events from 3 years ago. It has nothing to do with cabin inspections. Gloria's mouth opened and closed like a fish. But... Deputy Collins was already reaching for his handcuffs. Ma'am, you need to come with me. That's when Gloria completely lost it. This is unconstitutional. I demand a lawyer. I demand to speak to the real authorities. Sarah, who was literally the real authority in this situation, just watched as Gloria was loaded into the back of the patrol car. Gloria stammered, denied everything, claimed deep fakes. But Sarah had body cam footage, time-stamped images, and, just for fun, a witness statement from a former HOA treasurer who now ran a dog-walking business called Snitch and Fetch. The sheriff was called. Gloria was cuffed at the bottom of my driveway, screaming about constitutional overreach and deep state compost toilets. I watched from my porch, sipping my coffee, as 3 years of petty tyranny finally met its match in the form of actual legal consequences. At the next HOA meeting, now live-streamed due to popular demand, I presented a 3-minute presentation called Boundaries, Warrants, and Why You Leave Married Men's Cabins Alone. Sarah sat beside me, calmly knitting a scarf that read, BYOB equals bring your own badge. Gloria's resignation was immediate and tearful. The new HOA president instituted a simple rule. If the property has no smoke, bees, or bodies, leave it be. The meeting ended with actual applause. Gloria pled down to community service and 2 years probation. Ironically, she was assigned to help clear trail overgrowth behind my cabin. Sarah occasionally waved from the porch. The woman who'd spent 3 years trying to inspect my composting toilet was now picking up literal garbage within sight of it. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. When Gloria saw Sarah that first day, she turned so red I thought she might pass out. This is humiliating, she muttered to her supervisor. Sarah just smiled and went back to her knitting.